Councilmember Smith.
He's excused.
Deputy Mayor Herbig.
Here.
If you will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, the agenda will stand approved as written. Next item on the agenda, and every year, this is pretty special, we get to honor a couple of our employees. Mr. City Manager, if you would be so kind.
Yes, we recently received a letter from the president of the Washington Finance Officers Association. We actually received 2 letters recognizing both Brian Randall and Joanne Gregory for their achievements. Let me just read these letters. It says, "Dear Mayor Baker, the Washington Finance Officers Association and I would like to inform you that Joanne Gregory has earned the Professional Finance Officer Award for the state of Washington from the Washington Finance Officers Association. This annual award requires ongoing educational and professional excellence on the part of each individual and is not automatically awarded. Joanne is committed to achieving educational and professional excellence as acknowledged in the receipt of this award for 17 years. The association would like to thank you for your continued support and encourage you to recognize this accomplishment." We also received a letter same letter, except for 11 years, for Brian Randall, our accountant in our finance department. He's also received this award, and like I said, for 11 years. So with that, if they could come up and we could recognize them with the actual award that the association is presenting.
Get the right one.
Pretend you like each other. Did you see them? They're all so different.
They really do a tremendous job keeping an eye out for your money. We win these awards, we don't take them for granted, and every year we go through an audit with the state auditor's office, and every year we get a clean bill of health. I don't think there's really been ever any findings. Is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah. So it's always been clean, and they always get comments and stuff. And so I have attended, I think, just about all of the exit conferences from the audits, and they've always got good things to say. And we're very fortunate to have the staff that we have in the finance department with Brian and with Joanne, and also, help me think, Carla Schneed, yes. So, yeah, we're pretty fortunate. Got a great group of people. All right, next item on the agenda is a proclamation. And this proclamation is for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is October this year and every year. And one of the things we do is we try and display purple porch lights. And I know the city has passed out porch lights in the past, and I think we have them again this year. So come on down and get your free light to put on for the month of October. And whereas domestic violence is widespread and has a devastating impact on survivors, children, families, and our community. And whereas domestic violence does not discriminate and crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers, and is sustained by indifference. And whereas ending the cycle of this vicious crime requires the courage of survivors and the support of the larger community. And whereas our efforts must extend beyond the criminal justice system to include housing and economic advocacy for survivors, working with young people to stop violence before it starts, and reaching out to our friends and loved ones who have suffered from domestic violence. Now, therefore, I, David Baker, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Kenmore. And let us honor the survivors by promoting peace in our own families, homes, and communities. And let us renew our commitment to end domestic violence and its brutal and destructive effects so that domestic violence has no future in Kenmore or beyond. Is Heidi Hyatt and Lanny Kallstrom here to accept this? The City of Kenmore, Washington proclamation, whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to raise funds and build community partnerships that amplify the Northshore School District priorities for student and teacher education and excellence. Whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to enhance and inspire learning, remove barriers, and build skills for life for the more than 22,000 students in the Northshore School District. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to enhance and inspire learning by funding innovative classroom grants, new professionals training, National Board Teacher Certification, and AVID, Math Olympiad, and Northshore Speaks. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation exists to remove barriers by funding Backpacks for Kids, Opportunity Scholarship Fund, Basic Needs Aid, and Home Services. And whereas the Northshore School Foundation exists to build skills for life by funding student leadership, Hour of Code, Girls Who Code, career days, life skills training, and student recognition at the chamber level. And whereas the Northshore Schools Foundation represents the public arm of support for public education in the North Shore area, operating separately from the North Shore School District. And whereas North Shore Schools Foundation plays a key role in North Shore School District's recognition as one of the top school districts in Washington State and across the nation. And whereas the North Shore Schools Foundation has granted over $2 million to schools in the North Shore School District and aspires to provide funding and resources that benefit each of the over 22,000 students and every one of more than 300 or 3,000 teachers in all 35 schools and special programs every day. And whereas the North Shore Schools Foundation is funding solely through private contributions made annually through supporters of our schools, which include students, parents, teachers, staff, alumni, local businesses, regional industry, residents, and community members. And whereas the North Shore Schools Foundation has mobilized a significant involvement of over 8,000 people in support of their mission. And whereas the North Shore Schools Foundation is a member in good standing of the National Schools Foundation Association and has been voted the best of North Shore, a nonprofit category, and has earned the gold participation level through GuideStar. Now I therefore, David Baker, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October to be North Shore Schools Foundation All In for Kids Month in the city of Kenmore. And Aaron? Councilmember Curtis.
I have an out-of-order question.
Yes.
So I did find the proclamation from Governor Jay Inslee. Today is Falls Awareness Day. Would I be able to request that we add this to the agenda? We've already approved the agenda.
We've already approved the agenda.
Or do you want
But
me?
if there's no objections,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What awareness day?
Falls
Fall.
prevention.
people
Fall Prevention
falling.
Awareness Day.
And that's important in the community because we do have a significant elderly population, which I'm part of. And we do fall. So I think it's quite appropriate.
Would you like to read it, or would you like me to read it?
I think you're being the former doctor, certainly should read it.
All right. Unfortunately, I could only get it on this little device, and with the trifocals, it gets a little challenging. So, whereas it is estimated that 13% of the population in Washington State are 65 years or older, and whereas falls are the leading cause of injury, death, and the most common cause of non-fatal injuries and hospital admissions for trauma among those 65 years or older, and whereas the rate of death from falls for older adults in Washington State has risen more than 25% since the year 2000, and whereas 1 in 3 adults age 65 and older fall each year, and of those who fall, 20 or 30% suffer moderate to severe injuries such as lacerations, hip fractures, head injuries that make it hard for them to get around or live independently and that increase their risk of early death. And whereas a large proportion of fall deaths are due to complications following a hip fracture, and 1 in 5 hip fractures, patients die within a year of the injury. And whereas in Washington State, the highest rate of traumatic brain injury related deaths and hospitalizations were among people aged 65 years or older, and whereas older adults can remain independent and reduce their chances of falling through regular exercise, reviewing their medications with a healthcare provider, having their eyes checked annually, and making their home safer by installing safety devices, and whereas raising awareness among falls prevention can lead to improved rates of screening for fall risk, increase the number of individuals participating in evidence-based falls prevention programs, and highlight the importance of home and community safety. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim September 23rd as Fall Prevention Awareness Day. So I am on the State Falls Prevention Coalition, as well as the King County Falls Prevention Coalition. So this is a really important issue for me.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bring
and
that
thank
to
you
our
for
attention.
the council members for allowing me to go out of order.
It was well worth it. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments. And this is an opportunity for you to express your views on issues that are important to you and to the community. And we ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Clerk, please call the first person.
Susan Gins.
Good evening. I don't know if this is on or if I need it.
It's on.
Okay, thank you. My name is Susan Gins, G-I-N-S, and I have lived in Kenmore for 22 years, having graduated from Bastyr University with an MS in nutrition in 1997, the first graduating class from being in Kenmore. I also have a master's in textiles and aesthetics from Goddard College in Vermont, and owned a custom textile atelier in Seattle for 20 years. After looking over the Walkway and Waterways parts projects, public art consultation proposal written by Carolyn Law, I was very impressed with her resume and previous projects. The reason I'm speaking here tonight is to suggest there be a procedure whereby there can be some public input into the selections by your consultant and committee. It is not my intent to open a can of worms where we end up with too much input and stagnate the selection process. However, I do want to note for the record that Section 7, from time to time, it is possible for the City Council to select an ad hoc committee that will make recommendations for use of the 1% deposit. My suggestion is that at the appropriate time, there be an opportunity to have interested Kenmore citizens have some involvement as you see fit in the process. I also suggest that this opportunity not be limited to the membership of the Arts of Kenmore. I respectfully submit this to the City Council, Kelly Chellin and Debbie Bent. And I have copies of my statement if anybody would like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines.
Phyllis Finley.
Good evening. Phyllis Finley, Kenmore. My topic tonight is finances. I'm deeply concerned about the state of Kenmore's finances. You've projected that we will be in the red very shortly. I can't square that with the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being spent on the St. Edward Ball Field proposal. You spent money recently on a statistically validated survey to guide your decision-making. Let's review some of those results. 79% of respondents are satisfied with the number of city-owned parks and recreation facilities. Top priorities for investment did not include ball fields. Top priorities for investments did include natural areas and reserves. Only 33% of respondents have a need for outdoor multi-use athletic fields. Kenmore's current outdoor multi-use athletic fields fully, mostly, or partly meet the needs of 72% of respondents. Less than 5% of respondents consider outdoor multi-use athletic fields to be most important. Combine that most important ranking with second, third, and fourth most important, and that yielded only 12%. 61% of respondents are very supportive of acquiring properties to preserve natural open space and wildlife habitat, compared to 29% who are very supportive of upgrading or developing outdoor multi-use athletic fields. My estimation is that over $500,000 has already been spent or will shortly be spent on the proposal phase alone. At the council meeting on September 9th, the payment was approved for $72,504 to State Parks, which is $7,300 above the original contract. Remember, this doesn't include the actual project, which can really be 50% more than projected costs. And this is for a project that, according to your survey, statistically validated, is not supported by the majority of Kenmore citizens. These are my questions and comments from September of 2017 to the council, and since then, I'm still wondering. There are multiple documents on the city website related to the ball field development. I can't find one mention of money, not one dollar sign. At what point in time does the city think it's appropriate to inform the public about their past, current, and planned expenditures for this project? Is there a cap on the maximum dollar amount that the city is willing to pay for this project? If so, what is the cap? When will the citizens know about that? What's the cap for the upcoming engineering design alone? Going back to my original concern and wrapping up, how does the city justify this exorbitant expenditure with the projected budget shortfall? My request that on the St. Ed's link on your website that you include a cost topic. You have dates and milestones. By the way, the last date and milestone is December of 2018. You have projected documents and resubmittal documents. How about a cost topic where you list every item similar to a check register, date, amount, what it's for? That way, Kenmore citizens could easily follow this in a reasonably efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finley.
You're welcome.
No one else has signed up to speak.
Anybody else wishing to come forward? Anybody else wishing to be heard? Thank you for your comments, Ms. Gaines. We are looking at public art. It's certainly on the agenda tonight. And we have had a committee in the past. I'm not sure what the plans are, but I'm sure that your interest is well noted, and it's on the record. And I think when you signed in, you put your contact information. So it's good to have a name so that when we do have public input, you're certainly notified of it. Ms. Finley, thank you very much for your comments. I am not sure, there's not been expenditures except for the EIS that's going on right now. And I'm looking at Ms. Gregory, and I'm not seeing her nod her head in any direction. So anyway, thank you. And if we can get you information, we will. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda stands approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is business agenda, resolution number 19-329 and 19-330, providing for support or opposition to North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area Proposition Number 1, maintenance and restoration levy. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor and City Council. Like the Mayor said, in front of you are two resolutions. We're not asking you to adopt both. It's actually one or the other. One would support the North Shore Parks and Recreation Services levy that's coming up in November, and the other one would oppose it. So as a little bit of a background, the North Shore Park and Recreation Services area is a special purpose district that was created in the late 80s for the purpose of design and construction of the North Shore Senior Center facilities in Bothell. Shortly after the creation of this district, the board members issued bonds and a property tax levy to pay off the construction of the North Shore Senior Center buildings. So that bond and the resulting taxes to the taxpayers of the district was to pay off the bonds for the construction of those buildings. Unfortunately, there's no maintenance dollars available. The North Shore Senior Center, the nonprofit that operates in the building, they pay for incidental maintenance, but not for the capital maintenance needs, like replacing the roof and the siding and the HVAC. So these buildings have gone 30 years almost without any real capital maintenance done to them, and they're in need of some major capital repairs. So the North Shore Park and Recreation Services Board recently authorized a facility condition assessment, and that was done by a company called EMG, and they identified all the capital needs that need to be completed on the building. Based on those capital needs, and when I say we, the three cities and the staff that they could loan, created a 6-year business plan that talked about how these capital improvements would be made and the funding necessary to pay off those capital improvements. And that resulted in the board approving a 4-cent levy, a 6-year levy at 4 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation to be on for voter consideration in the November ballot. So that's how that levy came to be, is the facilities assessment and the resulting business plan, and then the board deciding to do a 6-year levy to get these capital improvements funded. Here at the table with me tonight is Brooke Knight, the executive director of the North Shore Senior Center, the nonprofit that operates all the programs at the senior center. Brooke, if you could take some time and tell us a little bit about the programs. Also, sitting right behind me is Jim Cave, and he's the project manager with EMG who did the facilities assessment. So he's here available for questions if you have any questions about the assessment itself. Brooke.
Good evening. Thanks for considering this tonight. I have been with the Senior Center for about 2 years and want to tell you a little bit about the Bothell Senior Center and how it relates to the Senior Center here in Kenmore and why those facilities are so important. Of course, both the Bothell Senior Center, the Kenmore Senior Center, and we have a Senior Center in Mill Creek are all under the auspices of the Northshore Senior Center. But they are all equally important, and really the Bothell Senior Center serves as a hub for those 3 senior centers as the largest facility with a lot more capacity to do much more specialized programming, clinical programming, and obviously a lot more space. That model and the importance of that model was recently recognized by King County, who awarded us about $1.6 million over the course of the next 4 years to enhance programs and services in those facilities in partnership with the Peter Kirk Community Center in Kirkland, really knowing that any one senior center can't meet the needs of everyone in the community. There's a lot of really specialized and unique needs that seniors have, and our Bothell facility has a lot more capacity to meet those needs, and so really emphasizing that hub model as a new model moving forward. $1.6 million is a lot of money. However, that was really targeted specifically for enhanced programs and services and funded through the King County Vets Seniors and Human Services Levy that was passed by voters in 2017. So we're really excited about that, but we need a building to house all of those programs. A couple of things that we are able to do in our Bothell facility that we do not offer here in Kenmore, primarily because of space considerations, are things like we offer an evidence-based program called Matter of Balance. That is a falls prevention program over in our Bothell Senior Center. We have Zumba, pickleball. We have our adult daycare center, which is a very much more clinical facility for people who have Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. We run what's called Rocksteady Boxing, which is a Parkinson's alleviation program. So those are all things that seniors here in Kenmore are able to access at our Bothell facility that we just simply don't have the room and space here in Bothell to offer to them. So the facility serves as a real hub for our community, for our seniors, for people with disabilities in our community, and we need to make sure that they stay safe and vital. I just want to share one story of something that we have been doing in Bothell over the last year or so that I know has been a huge impact. We recently, about a year ago, opened a small food pantry, and we had one woman tell us that in the course of the prior year, her husband had passed away, and during that 1 year time since he had passed, she had lost 40 pounds because she simply could not afford food. So the food resources that we've been able to offer through the senior center there in Bothell for hungry seniors, 63% of the people that we serve are low income or extremely low income, is just one example of the type of impact that those programs and services in that facility are able to provide to people in our community. Just to give you a real sense without reading this giant report of what the facility looks like and the need there. So we've tried really hard to keep it, continue to be a welcoming place, to be freshly painted, to look nice. However, it's when you kind of lift up the curtain that you see all of the that stuff that's wrong. Our facilities person was there 2 Sundays ago on the roof in the rain, trying to keep the rain from flowing into the building because we got a call that it was flowing into the building during the downpour. We actually had a frog in one of our bathrooms that had jumped through some sort of hidden hole behind the wall. And, you know, so these are just a couple of examples. We have mushrooms growing on an outdoor wooden structure. So it's not, the temperature isn't regulated. So people are cold in the winter and hot in the summer, or vice versa, depending on the given day. So while the building is a beautiful building, we try to keep it looking good. The reality is that there are some really, really significant facility needs that as a small nonprofit organization, we simply don't have the means to take care of. These buildings are owned by the community, owned by the taxpayers in this region, including the city of Woodinville, the city of Bothell, some parts of unincorporated, both King and Snohomish counties, and we want them to remain safe and viable assets for the community for generations to come. A lot of us are getting closer to needing the senior center, and frankly, I hope it's still there when I am retired and able to enjoy it. Thank you.
So, like we did for the resolution that we passed a few weeks ago, and in order to not run afoul of the PDC, let me read you the pros and the cons. So a yes vote would assess a new levy of up to 4 cents of assessed property value for residents in the taxing district, equivalent to the Northshore School District. Ensure funding is available to provide immediate and ongoing capital repairs to the facilities housing the Northshore Senior Center and Northshore Health and Wellness Center. A no vote would keep the Northshore Parks and Recreation Service Area tax rate at the current levels and not provide funding for capital repairs of the facilities, and it would necessitate deferring capital repairs of the facilities. Now, the city attorney is there, and I am going to rely on her to tell me when I start running afoul of things. But I have a meeting at the senior center once a month, and I talk with a number of seniors about what's going on in the city and the region. I know that it serves hundreds of Kenmore residents throughout the year, and that's a senior center that's located in Kenmore. I know the Northshore Senior Center in Bothell provides meals daily for a number of people whose only social interaction may be the sitting down and having a meal together. It provides an important service for this community. And the Northshore Senior Center in Bothell serves, I would venture to give, in the course of a year, thousands of people. They provide numerous opportunities for learning, for travel, for all sorts of social interactions to help people sort of stay in touch with reality. I know that the Kenmore Senior Center, which is part of the Northshore Senior Center, also provides a number of educational opportunities and programs for seniors in the Kenmore area. The Senior Center, I believe, in my own humble opinion, provides a valuable service to the seniors in our community. Anybody else? Councilmember Curtis and Councilmember Shrebnick.
So a couple thoughts. One, in my role at Evergreen Hospital, the Northshore Senior Center was seen as a real asset for our patients and our community. And then in my recent falls prevention role, as I've learned more about the Senior Center, there are so many programs going on over there all the time. And a lot of those things, a lot of the classes are being taught by volunteers. So they stretch their dollars because there's like this infinite need and limited amount of money. So a lot of really good work is being done at the North Shore, and I would be, it just wouldn't be right for our community to not take care of the capital needs necessary for the program to have a location.
Councilmember Shrebnick.
Just a couple kind of questions. I also really value the senior center and the other activities that go on the campus. One of my questions relates to that. Would some of these funds be, support the building, I don't even know what it's called, across the street that houses the Wranglers?
Yes, so it would be
Okay.
for both of the
Both.
MPRSA owns both of those
Right.
buildings and the pedestrian overpass. And yes, in fact, the most critical need right now is in the building that houses the Wranglers, the foundation. There's standing
Yeah.
water in the foundation, which
Yeah.
is apparently bad.
Okay, so that was one of my questions. And I understand that the programming, the North Shore Senior Center programming, Kenmore programming is a part of that, but that, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the funding for this, which is capital improvements, is limited, limited to the facilities in Bothell?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this levy would fund just those two buildings
Yeah.
and the pedestrian overpass owned by the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area. We
Right.
actually, through the King County Vets Seniors and Human Services levy, that $1.6 million that I referenced, we did carve out a little bit of funding that we are hoping to target towards some facility improvements here in Kenmore, and I've been in conversation with the city about that.
Okay, and the last question is, given that this is mostly for the Bothell facility, which of course is much bigger and has more capacity, this is sort of a side question, do you provide transportation from this area to,
We
okay,
do. In
that's what I
fact,
thought.
the city of Kenmore helps to fund that, but we also get funding from King County Metro, State Department of Transportation, and we have mini buses that are wheelchair equipped. We provide door-to-door transportation, and actually recently expanded our transportation program to do some volunteer transportation and travel training for seniors, to teach them how to use public transportation in a way that is comfortable to them.
Excellent, thank you.
So, one more time in a little bit greater detail, the arguments for. Proponents believe that 4 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. This maintenance operations levy is a modest investment for some of the most vulnerable members of our community, seniors and people with disabilities. If passed, the levy would cost the average homeowner less than $1.70 a month. The Senior Center is a nonprofit organization that does not own these facilities, nor have the financial means to generate the revenue needed to fully restore them. It is vital that these important public assets remain safe and well-maintained for generations to come. The arguments against are, those opposed to the ballot measure may argue that overall taxing rates have gone up in the area, and that an additional increase in property taxes would put more of a financial burden on taxpayers. Opponents may also argue that other funding sources, including fees on users of the facility, should be explored before moving forward with a property tax levy ballot measure. So, those are the arguments for and against. Is there anybody else wishing to comment, or Councilmember Marshall?
I just wanted to state for the record that after further review and out of an abundance of caution, because I sit on the board of the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and from the vote.
So,
Mr. Mayor, I think it also would be appropriate to ask the audience.
yes,
Mr.
absolutely. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor or against the, yes, Ms. Gaines? Could you come up to the microphone so we can all hear you? Sorry. And we need to get this for the record.
I attend a program there once a week at the senior center. I am a senior. I am a member of the senior center, and it's just a fabulous place. It's very inviting. People are very friendly. They have a hardworking staff. They produce, if you've seen their booklet of all the classes and everything they have, I just think it's a tremendous asset to this entire area.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gaines. All right, so I guess there could be a resolution in front of us. Motion 19-3929 in support of the initiative. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. So, is there any further comments on the motion 19-329 in support of the initiative? In support of, yes, the Proposition 1, Maintenance and Restoration Levy. I'm looking to the attorney. Is this proper to bring this one up?
Yes.
Great. So there's a motion and a second to support the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area Prop 1 Maintenance and Restoration Levy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, will clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Smith? Oh, sorry, recused. Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Januski?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. So I don't need to go to the other one, right? Since we passed the one in.
That's
favor.
correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure we don't run afoul of the PDC. All right. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 19-0485, amending the Kenmore Municipal Code, Chapter 9.15, false alarms. Chief Horvath.
Mr. Mayor, and Deputy Mayor, and City Council. I come before you to amend the current alarm ordinance that's in effect. Largely, this ordinance was created in 1998 and has been in effect for the last 21 years. The accessibility of information to officers now in the field has changed drastically over that 21 years with the aid of computer-aided dispatch being in all patrol cars. Since the enactment of the false alarm ordinance, it requires owners to register their home alarm systems with the city by filling out a contact card, essentially, and filing that with the city clerk. In my tenure here at the city and in speaking with the city clerk, a legacy contact card file has not been located by either her or myself, and we've not been able to create one for the last several years that this ordinance has been in effect. The ordinance also requires that if an alarm system is not registered with the city, that officers not respond to said alarm until such time that that alarm is registered with the city clerk. This registration requirement was put in place so that the police department could easily access an alarm owner's information so that subsequently police department could notify owners of repeated false alarms and levy potential fines against the owners until, and even stop responses to the alarms until the alarm was put into, repaired and put into operation again. And that notification was made to the police department that repairs had been put into place. As I mentioned, the city has not maintained a legacy file of these contact cards for multiple years. And with the implementation of the computer-aided dispatch being in all patrol cars, the alarm company and contact information is readily available to officers at the time of dispatch. We're able to look up that information on our screens, and we'll see who the alarm company is and who the registered owner of said alarm is. With that information, we can further contact the alarm company and obtain additional information. Further, with historical CAD, we're able to look back into the past and see if a particular alarm has caused repeated false alarm responses, and then we can go further by sending a notification of correction to the owner or fines. If the city chooses to continue with the contact card registration process, the database does not reflect the plethora of alarm systems currently in operation with the city, as we haven't maintained such a file, and for several years, alarms have been installed into residential homes and businesses, not been registered with the city, and we wouldn't have those. Further, the officers in the field And the King County Sheriff's Office 911 Center do not have access to the city clerk's file to see if an alarm has been registered. And so alarms would continue to be dispatched to officers, officers would continue to respond, and we would just handle business as normal. It is my recommendation as such that the current ordinance be amended to remove the requirement for owners to register their alarms with the system and to remove any language in the alarm code that requires the alarm companies to notify us of said registration numbers issued to a particular alarm. The city attorney has reviewed this, or reviewed the changes to the ordinance and has approved them.
Questions? So the effect then of this motion would be to strike the entire 9.15.030 section from the municipal code.
Mr. Mayor? Yes, it would, and
Yes.
also it would strike out any references later in the chapter, which, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, the chair would entertain a motion then to approve ordinance number 19-0485, amending Kenmore Municipal Code, Chapter 9.15, false alarms. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Marshall.
And a question, so then it should be able to be taken care of, first of all, hopefully, by the private vendors, by those alarm companies, checking with the owners to see if that's a real alarm or no?
That is correct.
Okay.
So as an alarm is installed by a vendor, they would test the system. And the standard practice is that, and having gone through this with my own home alarm system, the alarm companies will come out, install the alarm, and then call their call center to make sure that it is sending the alarm to the call center and make certain that the call center has the appropriate 911 center to notify in case there is an alarm activation. Instructions are also provided to the owners on how to operate the system, how to deactivate the system, any code words that need to be registered with the alarm company at a time of a false alarm or false activation.
Also, I mean, they must then obviously also notify the police department themselves, the private companies?
The private companies call the PSAP, which is the 911 center, that there's been an alarm activation, and then officers are dispatched to that residence or that address. Mhm.
Just curiosity, what about those alarm systems that aren't tied into the?
We are still able to find that information through county records, finding out who the tax owner is of the property, and then we can determine ownership that way.
Yeah, but I'm just curious, since there's no 911 involved, do you guys?
So again, if it's an unmonitored alarm system, it just sounds audibly, because in that case, a silent alarm serves no purpose, so those would be audible alarms. We'd be dispatched, neighbors would call us, we'd respond to the house alarm. If we found somebody there, we would contact them and obtain their information at that time, and we could record it in our CAD system. Again, repeated calls to the same address would produce the same information historically, and we could address that with correction letters and levying fines. For those alarms that, I've lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. I think I answered your question.
You have.
All right.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, clerk, please take the roll. And the motion is to approve ordinance number 19-0485.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember Srebnick?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda. Approve the use of unexpended public art funds in the amount of $114,000 to add to the 1% public art fund generated from the 3 Walkways and Waterways project at Logwell Park, Squire's Landing, and Rhododendron Parks in order to create significant works of art in each of the 3 park sites. Ms. Spinn and Ms. Gregory.
Good evening, Council. That's what we're here to ask your direction from. The 3 Walkways and Waterways Parks projects we anticipate will generate about $70,000, so 1% for the arts. So we know that, and that's based on 1% of the estimated construction cost. That's how it's calculated. So what we're here tonight to ask is the unexpended amount of money in the Public Art Fund, which is about $49,000. And $65,000 is estimated from the Walkways and Waterways 68th Avenue project. We're asking if you would consider allocating some or all of that $114,000 to the money for the rhododendron, log boom, and Squire's Landing project. That's what we're here tonight to ask. Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Shrevenick, then Councilmember Curtis. Deputy.
This, I think, is similar to one of the comments from citizens tonight. I had two questions. One is if you can kind of describe the community input process, so that's one. And then the other is, it's from discussions with the city manager, it sounds like we could allocate all of this to those three parks, and we don't have to allocate all of it.
That's correct.
I'm specifically thinking of the town square as a place that we might want to consider some sort of public art. And so that I'm not sure about allocating all of it, if it doesn't leave us anything to do that.
Right. That's certainly council's discretion to allocate some, all, or none. You asked about the public involvement and the selection process for art. We will be coming back later to the council outlining what that process will be. So it is, as I noted that in the agenda bill, we have a contract with an artist to help with that process to determine the best location or how to integrate art into the Log Boom, Squires and Rhododendron Park projects. We do anticipate there would be a committee. We do anticipate that it would be, not to say again, we'll be outlining further what that will be and when it will occur. So this is sort of the first step, is how much money do we think will be available to support that process, to select an artist and then have the artist design the artwork, and then actually the cost of the construction and fabrication and installation. So more to come on the selection process.
Councilmember Curtis.
So my question relates to the 114,000 that's not been spent yet. And it looks like 49,000, it just says Public Art Fund available balance. Was that money that was specifically designated for the town square, or was that some conglomeration of multiple projects? So I don't exactly understand what's in that line. And then the 65,000 is 68th Avenue pedestrian and bicycle safety walkways project. And it sounds like there the issue is there's a really good art project in that, so it'd be better used in a more constructive way. Am I understanding those two?
Yes, so that the 68th Avenue, your understanding is absolutely correct. There is not the opportunity to actually install art as part of that project, so that money would then go into the art fund. The $49,000, and Joanne can jump in any time, I don't believe is from the Kenmore Village project.
No, not at all. It's a accumulation of past projects that contributed to the art fund, but has not yet been expended. So when we were constructing Kenmore Village Hangar and Town Square, at one time there had been a separate line item budget for art for the Town Square, and a process in which an artist was selected, and we went down that road, which did not result in a selection of art. And then the following biennium, nothing was budgeted for art in the Town Square or the hangar. So that's still an outstanding opportunity, I guess you could say, for art, because we have not expended any, and it did not contribute any to this fund.
Okay, so my inclination on this is to allocate all the remaining funds to the three big projects that are coming, so we can do some really nice art there. Everybody loves the hangar building in the town square, and there's a lot of art sort of built into it, like the sidewalks, the way they're interesting shaped, and they have the other Kenmores around. And I don't hear anybody saying, "Man, this would be a really cool place if it had some art." I feel complete as is, so I don't think I think it'd be a waste of money to put a big art project in the town square. So I'd rather use it for the other three projects that are coming. So that'd be my inclination.
Deputy Mayor?
What was the original money set aside for, or what was the proposed budget for the town square art? It's about $40,000 or?
Yes.
I believe that's, yeah.
Okay.
What we're all recalling. It was like a biennium ago, and I
Yeah.
didn't recall off the top of my head, but.
I mean, I'm inclined to keep $40,000 set aside and try to try to get that ball rolling again at some point, because I think there probably is a place for something interesting to go there. But other than that, I'm fine with moving the rest of the funds over. The $65,000 plus another $9,000. I'm happy moving that over myself. Thanks.
Councilmember Danuski?
He just said everything I was going to say. Exactly. So, yes, the 65, I definitely agree we should move over, but I do want to keep some money for town square art, and 40,000 seems realistic.
Anybody else? All right, so I guess we're looking for an emotion to approve the use of unexpected public art funds in the amount of $114,000 to add the 1% public art funding generated from the 3 Walkways and Waterways projects in order to create 3 significant works of art in each of the 3 park sites. Their emotion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we reallocate $74,000 to the other 3 projects, leaving $40,000 allocated for town square art.
So there's a motion,
Second.
moved and seconded, to leave 48,000 for, 40,000 for the town square project and allocate the rest to the $74,000 to the other Walkways and Waterways project. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Curtis?
So if we accept it as it's worded, does it mean the 40,000 must go for the town square, or it's just unallocated funds in an art fund that could be used at some point in the future? So I'm clear on the motion. Does it specifically identify where the 40,000 will go, or it's just saying where the rest of it will go?
I believe it was doing both.
Okay.
What'd you say?
I believe that my motion was doing both reallocating the
that's what it sounds
74,000
like.
and putting 40,000 aside for town square art.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Danuski?
So I was just about to vote yes, but I don't want to necessarily say that 40,000 needs to go to town square art unless, because we've gone through that process once. I would like 40,000 to go there, but I don't want to hamstring it to only being town square when we may or may not find an art project that works there. So I'm going to end up voting no, just because I would like to just leave that. All right, okay, I guess I could.
Yeah, just do a friendly amendment.
Okay. I'd like to amend it that it's 40,000 left in the art fund, but not tagged to anything specific.
All right, so we have a motion on the table that defines 40,000 for the public square with 74,000 going to the 3 Walkways and Waterways project. There is amendment.
Do you need a second for that amendment?
Yes.
I'll second that.
There's an amendment that would not restrict the 40,000 to the town square. So we take the amendment first. The amendment is not to restrict $40,000 to the town square. Is there any discussion? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I'm fine with the amendment. I just hope that we give another swing at public art in the town square, but I'm fine not tying it down.
All right, any further comments? On the amendment, not to tie the 40,000 to the town square, Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Curtis,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes?
Councilmember Danuski,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
All right, now, back to the main motion as modified, which puts aside 40,000 and 74,000 going to the three main walkways and waterways projects. Any further discussion? The clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Danuski,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes?
Councilmember Curtis,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
All right, so the motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
That if staff could get with her, please, it's not really appropriate at this point for questions. Next item on the agenda is staff report, heavy manufacturing history. Mr. Hampson, Development Services Director.
Good evening, Council. Hopefully this won't take too much time. If you remember at the January Council retreat, we had some discussions about heavy manufacturing regulations and what we have done and haven't done to date, and there was a little confusion. So you guys asked us to remind you what ordinances we have passed and what we discussed about what haven't passed. So that's what I'm here to do tonight. So we did pass 3 ordinances. One of them was adding a new heavy definition, or heavy manufacturing definition to the code. Prior to that, the heavy manufacturing wasn't defined as such. And this definition really means that you're engaging in creating or building some materials. And so an example of that would be the asphalt batch plants or the concrete plant. So that was one of the first things we did in that first ordinance. Another thing we did was we prohibited heavy manufacturing throughout the whole city. And so prior to that, there was some language that would allow some sort of manufacturing to be done in the RB zone, but that ordinance prohibited it throughout. The third thing we did with that ordinance is we changed the language about existing legal uses. And for some reason, for heavy manufacturings that were in the RB zone, if they were established prior to May 8th, 2008 legally, then they would actually not be considered an existing legal use, but they'd be an outright permitted use, and so they'd get all the benefits or follow the same regulations that a permitted use would. So we took that out of the code. And then on July 27th, 2015, we created a business registration, or excuse me, regulation license for heavy manufacturing. So now they're required to come in and get an annual business license. We also established a noise ordinance that requires them to comply with the state level of noises. And we also had an additional component of it, which was they would submit quarterly monitoring reports to the city to make sure that they're in compliance with the noise ordinance. So that's what the ordinances that we have put into effect since we started this discussion a few years ago. Stuff that we didn't pursue was on September 12th, 2016. We discussed eliminated all noises associated with heavy manufacturing, and the consensus from you guys at that time were to hold off on doing that. And then on June 25th, 2018, we discussed the possibility of a 20-year amortization for heavy manufacturing, and that was also put on hold. So that's pretty much what we've discussed at public meetings and ordinances we have put in place. I have the current code language in there, what it means for the current situation, if you want me to go over that information.
Deputy Mayor?
So Brian, I read through this, and something I didn't see was hours of operation. Wasn't that part of the business license requirements
That's
was?
stuck into the business license requirement. It had the hours of operations.
Okay, okay. And I have heard from some folks that of some of the plants on there operating as early as 4 o'clock in the morning on weekends and things like this. What sort of remedy is there for folks who are seeing activity over there outside of the hours of operation on the business license?
They could file a complaint with us, and we can ask the heavy manufacturing operator to submit a noise monitoring report. Anytime they're doing any work out of their regular business hours, and we ask for a noise monitoring report, they have to submit it. So they can't be doing work that's outside of the hours unless it's conformance with the state law, the noise levels. And so they're supposed to be monitoring those noises if they're working outside.
So they're allowed to operate outside as long as their noise levels are low enough?
The noise is what really dictates the hours of operations that they could work. They could have lights on and somebody could be in the office doing some work, but it's actually the heavy manufacturing noises that they're limited to.
Okay, so if somebody sees something, you want them just to file a car?
Just have them file a car, a citizen action request, and they could do that through the city's website.
Okay.
And we could look into it at least.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Sherman?
I'm just aware that Councilmember Smith probably has the most interest in this, or, well, maybe not the most, but he was very interested in this topic and is not here, so I don't know how we address that. I just feel bad. This is coming up on a week that he's not here. So I don't know whether we can bring it back super briefly when he is, but that's up to.
I'm sure he will have the opportunity to talk with Mr. Hampson and let his thoughts
Yeah, we're happy
be
to
known.
get together with him and go over it.
Great.
So you don't want to know about the current regulations, what it means if nothing changes?
Do we want to know what will happen if nothing changes? Sure.
You do, okay. So the current code language has two different classifications. One is for a non-conforming use, and another is for an existing legal use. And so for it to be considered legally to be run out there as a heavy manufacturing, they're one of the two. And so a non-conforming use can't be expanded, or it can't be increased, the intensity of it. If it is damaged by some kind of natural disaster or fire, they can rebuild it, but it has to be the same size, and they have to rebuild it within 12 months. The existing legal use, it's really just about leaving, having the continued use continued, and they can't really abandon it. They can't abandon it for more than 12 months. Once they do, they lose their existing legal use definition. And then lastly, with the property left alone, without any redevelopment, everybody knows about the P suffixes that are on place on the property. The P suffix 4 is really for the redevelopment of the property and what all of the code requirements that it has to do. But there's another P suffix 10 that's in effect if the property just languages and stays as it is currently. And so what that really means is there can't be any retail on the property, there can't be any offices, there can't be any residential, no personal services, and it's really just limited to light manufacturing. So a new light manufacturing company could come in and apply for a conditional use permit at that site. But that's not necessarily heavy manufacturing, it's a lighter use. So that's what we'd be looking at with the current codes, the way they are.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council member initiatives, reports, and comments. But that was the staff report, at least according to my agenda as approved.
Just one more thing. On Thursday, October 3rd, we have a business open house and networking event. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. right here at City Hall. We'll be giving a city update to those who are coming, and we'll also have a special guest speaker. So encourage you to come Thursday, October 3rd, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. here at City Hall.
All right. Comments, initiatives, reports. Councilmember Marshall.
Councilmember Shrubnik's great suggestion. I asked the NPRSA board if they'd have any interest in potentially funding a preliminary siting study for a pool, and they were in the affirmative in that. That's great. As it turns out, though, there may be some alternative siting study methods not involving the funding that we might use. But at any rate, we're at least got a incremental step forward on that, and I appreciate Councilmember's suggestion. And then this is very much premature, but in terms of public art, I will again urge an aesthetic approach to avoid bronze cast, ultra unimaginative realism. That's all.
Councilmember Curtis.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
I have a couple of things. One is starting for a couple weeks next Friday, our own theater company, As If Theater, is putting on another performance at the Kenmore Community Club. It's called Kimberly Akimbo, so I hope you guys can all turn out for that. On a more serious note, I've been thinking about this for a while, and our city is a member of K4C, which I think is King County Climate Coalition. And of course, our state has been working on climate action as well. This last year, they passed a bill requiring utilities to supply Washington residents with power from 100% carbon-free sources by 2045. They still want to work on clean fuel standards for our state. I think those are great moves. Between that and one other point, from what I've been reading, we can reduce carbon emissions drastically by 70%. And that one other thing is 100% zero carbon pollution from new commercial and residential buildings by 2028, or by a date thereafter. But the goal is reducing pollution from new buildings. And that feels like, compared to the other actions, something that we can actually participate in and lead as a city. So I'd like us to think about if we can support that, or other measures that the city of Portland has taken in their climate action plan. And I know this is the first that we've even talked about this, but I just want to put it out there as something that I'd like us to think about.
Councilmember Danuski.
Nothing to add.
Deputy Mayor.
Actually, going off what Councilmember Shrubnik was talking about, that is an area that K4C is working on right now, because the Building Code Council is currently doing some work to increase, hopefully, the energy efficiency of new buildings in Washington State. And so K4C is working out a comment letter on that issue, I think. And it's actually an issue that came up at Coffee with Council that I was at with Councilmember Curtis on Saturday morning. There are some folks there who are interested in, maybe the city could go a little bit above and beyond what the Building Code Council ends up with. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what the Building Code Council lands on and see what that means. But yeah, there definitely might be room for us to, especially with larger projects, try to push for something a little bit greener.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. Nothing else to report.
So, if there is nothing further to come before us, we are adjourned.